Hello, brother. Dominic here. And it's just going to be you and me again today because our boy Brian is off on his honeymoon in Curacao with his beautiful new bride, Becca. Congratulations, buddy. I love you. And I can't wait to hear all about it. I'm coming to you from a very special place in my heart, a place that many of you longtime listeners know the special significance that it has for me. And that place is Boulder, Colorado. This is the place 10 years ago where I hit my rock bottom. This is the place where I finally surrendered 10 years ago and admitted to needing help, and where I came to make the decision to enter Sex Addicts Anonymous. This is the place where the old lower level version of me died, and it gave birth to a deeper version of me, a truer version of me, a more trustworthy version of me, a clearer version of me, a more purpose-driven version of me. And so this is the place I always associate with giving me a new lease on life. And so every year without fail for the last 10 years, I've made a pilgrimage out here to pay honor and respect to the new life that this home gave me. And every single time I'm here, something unfolds for me, a new awareness. I let go of something old, something new seeds are planted. And this trip has been nothing short of revolutionary for me in just the 5 days I've been here so far. And you guys will be hearing about many of the new awarenesses, breakthroughs, downloads that I've been receiving here in the weeks and months to come, because my work is your work. Your work is my work. And we do this together. And so this morning when I was in meditation, one of the awarenesses that came to me was some of the gifts, the greatest gifts that I've experienced in life have come from reading, from journaling, and from breaking limiting habits. And I've had a significant amount of success applying what I've read and applying the practice of journaling to change my life in ways where many men struggle. And I've also found ways to break many limiting habits, sabotaging habits, in a way where it actually ends up feeling good and not requiring much work, to an extent where it's actually become joyful in many cases. So I thought in today's episode, I would give you some quick hit, practical, tangible guidance and advice on how to apply what you read in your life, how to use the practice of journaling to unlock new portals in your life, even if journaling has always been something you've struggled with, and how to break habits for good. Before we get into the episode, just one more point of clarification is if the sound quality is not as crisp as you're used to hearing, it's because I'm using one of those old school wired headsets on my iPhone. And if that's not up to the quality that you've come to expect from the Great Man Within podcast, I apologize. And we'll be back with the pristine sound quality that you demand and deserve in the next week. So let's do this.
Hey, this is Dominic, and this is your home for the cutting-edge conversations on optimizing your personal performance, lighting up your sex life, and living a purpose-driven life of your own design.
These are the topics that Dominic and I have both struggled with in our own lives and still don't always get right. This is Brian. Welcome to the Great Man Podcast.
Let's talk about the power of applying what you are learning when you read books. I found that some people can read books and those books will change their lives. I found that other people will read books and intellectually consume the information, but their lives don't change. I've seen other people consume books, not remember anything that they've learned. In my life, books have played a transcendent role in helping me break through limiting beliefs, shatter ceilings, change my life. And I've had success in applying what I've learned. And so I started to reflect on what is it that I do? What is my process for applying what I learn when I read books to change my life, where so many others seem to struggle with taking the countless hours consuming reading books, listening to books on tape, and then never applying it in their regular lives, or their lives just not changing. And I boiled it down to one very simple part of my process that when I implement it, it kind of takes every other thing about reading and it makes it less relevant. And the one simple thing that I do when I read is I look for only one thing in the entirety of the book that I am going to take away and apply relentlessly in my life. See, here's the deal, guys. I'm currently reading a few books right now on vacation, 3 or 4 different books actually right now. And what I notice in the books that I'm reading is that there's such an abundance of information in the books that can almost be overwhelming. Trying to remember everything, all these little ahas and insights, and I'm underlining things and I'm taking notes. And at some points it can feel invigorating, but can also feel overwhelming, like I'm never going to remember all this stuff. And I'm not supposed to. Because if you think about it, when an author is writing a book, that author is trying to reach a significant portion of people. And inside of those 150 pages, 200 pages, 300 pages, there are 1 or 2 golden nuggets of wisdom that are going to reach one collection of people. There's another nugget of wisdom that's going to totally miss that first group, but it's going to hit another group, and on and on and on and on. Those 300 pages can then reach thousands of categories of different people. And so when I go into the book, I'm not looking to retain the 1,000 different insights or the 100 different insights that are in that book. I'm only looking for the one gold pearl of wisdom that when it hits my soul, I realize this is the reason why I came to the book in the first place. And I'm going to make a relentless commitment to putting this into practice in my life. Let me give you examples, 3 examples of the most impactful books of my life. Outwitting the Devil. I remember a gazillion concepts from that book, but the one that stands above the rest is the concept of drift. And unless this is the first episode that you've ever listened to from me, you all know I talk about drift ad nauseum, that unconscious state of existing on autopilot where you're limiting beliefs and patterns and habits and fears and needs for comfort run your life. And when I learned about that concept of being the number one enemy to living a powerful, intentional life, what I ended up doing was I wrote a book about it. Design Your Future, 3 Steps to Stop Drifting and Start Living. I wrote keynote speeches about it that I spoke on stages around the world talking about drift. I run a podcast where we talk about it, masterminds about it. That one concept revolutionized my life, and I looked at all of the ways that drift showed up in my life. And I wrote books, keynote speeches, podcasts, mastermind stuff to make it something that I knew for the rest of my life that I would bring intentionality to. The Way of the Superior Man by David Deida. Dozens of concepts from that book that I remember. The one that rises above the rest. Lean out over your edge constantly in everything you do. That shook me to my soul when I read those words. This idea of everything I do, I'm going to lean out over my edge, because when you lean out over your edge, your world expands. You confront the fear, which is the gateway to growth, right? And resistance, which is the gateway to growth. So I looked at how that showed up in my life. I said, okay, the thing that scares the shit out of me is running a men's group. Who the fuck's going to listen to me? I'm going to invite all my friends. These are the guys that I laugh it up with. They know all my fears. They know all my insecurities. They know all my weaknesses. And now I'm going to lead them. But I'm going to lean out over my edge. And I started running men's groups, which eventually led to me running my first men's retreat, which eventually led me to becoming an authority in the space and leading groups, and this being my purpose and passion in life. The one concept that I embody and I live every day, and that rolls off my tongue anytime I talk to men in the mastermind, it's one of our principles, leaning out over your edge constantly in everything you do. It informs a moment-by-moment awareness of, am I shrinking or am I expanding? One concept from that book, Rise Above the Rest. Tim Ferriss, 4-Hour Work Week. The key principle from that book, among dozens of principles that I still remember, the one that rises above the rest: why wait till the end of your life? Why defer the things you want to do, the adventures you want to go on? Why defer your purpose to retirement when 40 years from now you may be injured, ill, decrepit, you may be dead by that point in time? And instead, to take those dreams and intersperse them right now into your daily life. And as soon as I read that, I was still working at Prudential. I read that book back in 2013. I was a salesperson. The first thing I did was I booked a secret 21-day trip. I was a salesperson living in New York City, and I decided to book a 21-day trip in Miami and Puerto Rico. I think I had a stint in Orlando too because we were doing a sales conference down there. But I didn't tell anybody. And for those 21 days, I worked from 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. And the rest of the day, I was out on the beach. I was taking trips. I was going on jungle adventures in Puerto Rico because I wanted to know what it was like to travel, to be somewhere other than work. And what that eventually led to was me calling into question the work I was doing. And eventually in 2016, I left that 15-year career. And I lived the life of my own design, where adventures are a natural part of my work and my life. And actually, adventures are a part of the work that I do. Right? Creating these retreats where men go on, these immersions are part work, part adventure. So when it comes to the books you are reading, if before you even open the cover, setting the intention, I am on the hunt for the one thing that I am going to look for as treasure, the buried treasure in this book, that I will make a commitment to myself that I will relentlessly apply this in my life when I'm done reading the book. And I'm not going to start reading another book until I fucking start applying what I've just learned from this one. Because if I'm just reading books and intellectually consuming, that's just intellectual masturbation. You're not building any kind of muscle. So I think I've said enough on that one. Let's move on to the journaling. Journaling is one of the greatest portals to your inner world, to understand what you desire out of life, to understand what's sabotaging you, what your fears are, to reflect on the wins that you've had, on the future you want to create. But I would say fewer than 5% of men actually journal on a consistent basis and use the practice as a leverage point to uplift their lives. And I understand why, because I've been in the situation where I've sat down with a pen and a paper and I'm like, what the fuck do I write about? I have no idea. I'm blank. So what I'm going to share with you is a very, very simple practice that if you learn and apply, you will never have problems journaling ever again. I promise you that. Very simple formula. And if you figure this out, if you practice it, you will never have a problem journaling again because it's that easy. Okay? The practice that I follow, and there's so many different ways to journal, there's endless numbers of ways, but one very simple way, anytime that I'm feeling blocked, I first pick a theme that I am curious about in my life. And the one that I'm journaling on now, this trip, when I'm here in Boulder, is this fear I have about being seen as a dick. I have this fear of being seen as a dick. And as a result, I oftentimes slip into nice guy mode and persona, and I end up saying yes to things I want to say no to. I end up keeping my mouth shut when I want to speak up, and it's limiting my life. It's prohibiting me from speaking my power and truth. It's prohibiting me from going after some guys who are out there spewing some real shit in this space that I could be a real love warrior in guarding against. And ultimately, it's keeping me small. This fear of being seen as a dick or having other people not like me or rubbing people the wrong way. So I pick the theme that I'm curious about is this fear of being a dick. And the formula after that is I find 5 questions related to that theme that I want to answer for myself. What's a question that I have about this fear about being a dick? The first one I wrote down was, why am I so afraid of being seen as a dick? Why am I so afraid of being seen as a dick? That's a natural, curious question. And if you guys find it hard to ask yourself questions, sometimes I find it hard to ask myself questions. I pretend like I'm in a coaching situation and I'm sitting across from someone who's bringing me this problem of they're afraid of being seen as a dick. And so naturally, I just want to know, well, why are you so afraid of that? And so I'll ask that question and then I'll journal about it. And then once that answer is complete, I'll ask another question until I get to 5. These are my 5 questions. Why am I so afraid of being seen as a dick? Where did this fear come from? How does this fear impact my life? And how do I continue to perpetuate this fear? And then finally, the 5th and final question is, now where do I go from here with this new awareness? These 5 questions filled up about 3.5 pages worth of journaling in a black composition book that I have and led to some nothing short of revolutionary insights about my childhood, about the impact that being afraid of being a dick is causing in terms of like my dilution of power and speaking potently, of garnering the kind of respect that I feel I deserve, of just being inauthentic and betraying myself when I don't speak up, when I try to shrink to make someone else feel comfortable. So the bottom line here, guys, is when you want to sit down and journal about something in your life, you have to pick the theme about something you're curious about or something that you're stuck on. And all you need to do is come up with 5 questions that you want to answer. And if you have a problem or you get stuck with coming up with those questions, then picture someone sitting across from you and you're coaching them. Maybe it's your kid, maybe it's whatever. Just picture how you would ask them curious questions. And once the questions get written, then start to answer them. The final piece that's so important about this, guys, is the quality of questions you ask often determines the quality of the life that you live. I know that that's either Tim Ferriss's or Tony Robbins, but the quality of questions that you can start to learn how to ask about your own life has a direct impact on the quality of life you live. And the reason for it is because a problem well stated is half solved. A problem well stated is half solved. If you can ask yourself the question, that's like, why am I so afraid of being the dick? And then I can answer that question. Well, now I know what my problem is. That's half of the solution. And eventually I can go towards, speaking up for myself more often and fixing some of these other fears. But now I know the source of the problem, and then half the problem is already solved. There's your journaling practice, guys. Anyone can do this with enough practice and commitment. What I would encourage you to do for the next 5 days, sit down, pick a different theme of your life that you want to get curious about. Why am I not having more sex? Why am I not making more money? Why do I feel like I have everything that I want on paper, but I feel unsatisfied? There's no shortage of these themes that you can write down. Maybe even sit down and write a list of themes that you're curious about, and then pick a few of them that light your balls on fire and write about them for the next 5 days using this practice. So the last realm of our conversation that I want to cover with you is around how to break limiting habits that sabotage you. And God knows I've had many habits that I've needed to break over the course of my lifetime, including sex addiction, including addiction to being busy all of the time, including poor behavior and habits with eating. Used to eat a ton of junk food when I was in college. I would eat Taco Bell 4 to 5 nights a week, no joke. McDonald's, Burger King, CiCi's Pizza, for those of you guys from the Richmond, Virginia area, Taco Bell, that's the shit that I would live off of. I was a walking dumpster fire of poor health and habits. And what I've found over the course of my life, and I've tried a lot of different things in breaking habits, I've found that sheer willpower, strength, and abstinence, habits place. Like when I was in Sex Addicts Anonymous, my 4 years, you guys know, if you've listened to the show before, I told you that I'd used the blunt force instrument of like sheer abstinence, right? Just stopping masturbating, stopping porn for 4 years. And on some level, it absolutely works. I didn't do those things for 4 years. On another level, I still had cravings, deep ones, to do those things. And I know many of you who are struggling with alcohol use, porn use, illegal substances, eating emotionally, have had your bouts of being real lockstep with abstaining and stopping that behavior, but that craving builds inside of you. The desire for it never really goes away, and you're white knuckling, and eventually, something happens in your life, an emotional situation, you're overwhelmed or stressed, and that becomes the thing that you turn back to, and then you feel shitty about yourself, the shame spiral, the I can't do it, and you deal with that shit over and over and over again. So I've been there many times. I found a much more effective technique in working with these habits and breaking these limiting habits. It takes more time. It takes more energy in the short term. Actually, I'm going to catch myself here. Because I'm thinking to one of my brothers in the mastermind where he's currently breaking his poor habits, lifelong habits, 35, 40-year habits of eating in a way that's unhealthy for him. And he's done many of those crash course diets where he's gotten himself down to a particular weight, feels good for a very short period of time, and then balloons back up, and had that yo-yo thing going on for many years of his life. And for the first time in his life, he's going about it differently with the support of the mastermind, where instead of monitoring his weight, he's monitoring, is he living in accordance with this affirmation of, I'm beautifully made by God, and every choice I make with my food is in service of my health and my family's health. And it is a very different energy that he's bringing. It's not a fear-based energy. It's actually much more of a moving towards something that's deeper towards his great man. And so when we were having this conversation the other day I said to him, hey man, this process may take longer for you to get to the weight that you desire. He actually caught me and he said, no. I've tried the other way for 35 fucking years. That's a long time. If this takes me 5 months, 6 months to get to the ideal weight, it takes me a year to get to that is a radically truncated period of time to get to the weight in a way that's sustainable where I can live for the rest of my life. That's the shortcut. And I'm glad that he caught me on that because he's right. So what I learned when I was engaging in some of these habits that I wanted to break, like, for example, we'll start with something simple. With my fast food, I don't know if it was an addiction, but I'll just use that word to be lazy. This fast food addiction, eating Big Macs and fries and chicken tenders and going to Taco Bell 5 nights a week, what I started to realize was that after I'd eat that stuff, I'd feel like shit. My farts would stink. I'd feel lethargic. I'd feel sloppy. The oil on my skin, like pimples and shit. And I started to notice how badly it made me feel. But when it would come time for the craving would overwhelm me. It's like all I could think about was Taco Bell. All I could think about was just needing that chalupa and the gordita and stuffing my face with it. And in those moments, nothing else mattered, right? So what I recognized what I needed to do was after I'd gorge myself, I'd go to Taco Bell. I'd give into it. What I would do after that was I would pay acute attention to how I felt in the aftermath. I wouldn't distract myself from it because I was ashamed. I wouldn't try to, do something else and pretend like it didn't happen. I would sit and wallow in the disgustingness, feeling the burp and some of that Taco Bell throw up come up. I'd feel the oil on my skin. I'd feel the disgusting, slovenly nature of not wanting to do anything and just being grossed out by myself. I'd smell my shits in the toilet, how disgusting. I'm probably grossing you guys out right now, right? That's the point. And every time that I would sit in the presence of how horrible that felt, the next time I felt the craving, I'd bring that awareness of the awfulness of the aftermath into the moment of the craving. And the next time I had the craving was still more powerful, but I would feel the awfulness at the same time. And I would go forward, I'd indulge in the craving, and then afterwards I'd be in that aftermath again. I'm like, fuck, I knew it would feel this way. And I'd feel it again, and I'd go deeper, and I'd pick up on some other nuance of how awful it feels, and I'd go again. And what ended up happening was, with each time the craving, as that craving would pop up for McDonald's or Taco Bell, instantaneously, the feelings of awfulness would happen at the same time. It's kind of like the Pavlov dog, right? Where the bell would ring, the salivation. Well, when I felt that craving, I would feel the awfulness in my body right away. As a result, over time, I just didn't want Taco Bell anymore or McDonald's anymore. I haven't eaten fast food in over a decade. Under very few circumstances, I can't really think of any, would I want to go back and eat those things, because whatever momentary satisfaction I might have in the taste, the awfulness of the aftermath just far and away exceeds. And that's the point here, guys. When the consequences and the gravity of the consequences, when you can feel into that fully, when you have the courage to feel into that fully and not escape that, and to really understand the aftermath of it. And when you bring that into the moment of, I'm going to either make a decision to do that thing or not do that thing, that feeling of crappiness is just so overwhelming. It's like, wait, it's easy. I'm never going to put another Big Mac in my mouth. At least not for reasons of taste. Like maybe if I'm dared or if there's a bet or if there saves a child, I don't know. But I'm never going to eat a Big Mac again under those previous circumstances. And there's no more desire for it. That's the thing, guys. The desire is gone. I don't have to try anymore. And I've used that similar approach with being relentlessly busy in my life and always getting things done. I've used that approach to break compulsive behaviors around masturbation and pornography. And I use pornography, I use masturbation in like little increments that feel good for me, but never with those shameful aftermaths like I used to experience. Now it's under my control, right? And I don't have to try and use the willpower or the discipline. It's not as exhausting anymore because I've worked at the root and eradicated the desire. So the formula here is simple, guys. Whatever that habit is or that pattern is, next time that you indulge in it afterwards, pay acute attention. Like wallow in that aftermath. Don't distract yourself from it. Presence it. Talk about it with another guy or another friend about how awful it is. Like really become expert in how shitty it feels. And then when you're about to engage in that thing again, bring that into that experience as you go indulge in it again, and then dive into it one more time around like, what is it that I'm feeling? How shitty is it? And over time, that habit, that feeling, that pattern will start to dissolve. Well, brother, that felt pretty good for me. Sharing those with you and even getting smarter and more intelligent about my own processes as I shared that with you. I hope it was valuable to you. If you want more conversations like these on the regular, there's 2 ways to do that. First, I offer up daily free text messages that package these doses of wisdom, these anti-drift messages, where I talk about masculinity, purpose, high performance habits, what women want. And I send those on a daily basis. There are 1,100 men who are already on this list getting daily text messages. You can stop at any time. And there's a very easy link at the top of the show notes. You click on that link. It will bring up a text message with the word that says Instagram on it. You just have to send that message, text it to me. The reason why it says Instagram is because I usually send that out as a prompt on Instagram. That will get you on the list. You'll get daily notifications of texts on masculinity and anti-drift messages and staying connected to your purpose. The second way is to join our Facebook group for men. I think we have close to 1,000 guys in the group now. And that link is at the top of the show notes too. And if there was something in today's podcast around reading, around journaling, around breaking bad habits that was poignant for you, come into the Facebook group, share that, how you're applying that. The group is very engaging and encouraging. You will find other guys who want to comment on your posts and who want to connect with you. So come on into the group, share what you've got, and we'll see you in there.
Hey, did you get something of value out of this podcast? If so, I'm going to ask you a favor. Would you be so amazing as to go over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and a review? Your ratings and reviews can show someone who's just discovered our podcast for the first time that we are worth listening to. And that way we can reach a wider audience. So please head over to Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating and review. You rock.